Welcome to another episode of Agility at Scale, where we'll explore the cutting edge of agile practices and innovative thinking. Today, we've got the pleasure of hosting Lynne, a renowned keynote speaker, facilitator, and mentor. Lynne Kazali has dedicated her career to helping individuals and organizations unlock their greatest human capabilities through clever and creative ways of thinking, working, leading, and collaborating. She's the author of 10 insightful books, including Sync Async, too much information, not enough brain, and Ish, the life-changing practices of good enough. Lynne's work has been featured in prestigious publications such as Harvard Business Review and Forbes, and her latest talk, Clever Skills Putting Your Greatest Human Capabilities to Work, addresses the increasing challenges we face in the modern workplace and how we can adapt to remain relevant and purposeful amidst rapid change. We're thrilled to dive into this topic and learn from Lynne's extensive expertise. Welcome, Lynne. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. And hello, good evening and good morning and good afternoon whenever you're listening to this and wherever you are. And a special hello to those who joined us live. And if you're walking in a park somewhere or commuting or perhaps multitasking while you're focusing on one thing and listening to this, good luck. Good luck with your information absorption. I'm thrilled to be here because I've been obsessed about skills for a long time. Before I dive into that topic, just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I stand. I'm in the Yallukat Willem lands, which is the river people of Melbourne, so the Port Melbourne area. And I always reflect on how there's an area near where I live that's called Lagoon Reserve, a great big open green sports ground, I guess. Lots of people walk their dogs there, and it used to be a very plentiful lagoon with, you could imagine, lots of beautiful, yummy seafoods and prosperous things that helped keep the community going for tens of thousands of years. And I think what clever skills, right? What clever skills they would have had to farm and to get the most out of the land and continue to do that. And then the beautiful, clever skills they have in songline and story and art and communication to keep the natural history of their tribes and clans going. So I know we're surrounded by lots of great thinkers who've had clever skills for centuries before us. But tonight I want to talk about some of your human capabilities. So we know there's plenty of technological capabilities we can tap into, but I particularly want to focus on some of the human things that we've got. Some authors have been talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and it's cognitive, that is our thinking power. So I thought I'd share some of my thoughts to get your thoughts going so that you can package up more of those thoughts and use them perhaps more diligently, more directedly in your career and in your life generally. And I say it's directedly a word, taking more control over it, over our thinking. As I know, we have this thing called the default network, that our brain does all this stuff in default. That stuff like keeps us breathing or runs habits for us to be very economical and efficient. But sometimes we fall into habits, particularly around our thinking, say at work or working with others. But if we could be more directive to our brain, which we can do, we can be more deliberate, more directive. So I think there's an opportunity here for us to do that. So let's have a look. Oh, look at that nice picture. And you match the colour scheme there, Jason. That is like very good. I'll give you a score for that. I'll just give you the love your work sign. Well done. For matching the colours there. It's most impressive. I love looking at memes. It says it all, doesn't it? But our skills of being weird and petting cats, but so far it has not translated into financial success. And our skills can be like that we excel in certain things, but there might not be a huge market for them, or there might be skills we engage in private, or perhaps there's skills that our friends and family and nearest and dearest know that we have, but our employer will never know. And that can be a good and a bad thing, because I think a lot of us are kind of underutilized and unexplored. You know, we've got lots of great capabilities and talents, and usually our current employer knows very little about all of the awesomeness that we've had prior to working with them. And I was working with one client a couple of years ago, and we worked on what we called experience maps. And this was to build some good trust in the team, was for them to talk about some of the stuff they'd done before they came to this organisation. And we were able to uncover all these sort of previous lives that people had. Someone had been a paramedic, and someone had been in the military, and someone had been in nursing, someone had been a vet, you know, all of these incredible careers. If we're going to have 5 or 8 or 10 different careers in our lives, we've got an incredible array of skills. And I tell you what, if I was a leader leading a team, I'd want to know what my team had done, not just the jobs before they came to work with the company or the team, but I'd say, what did you do originally? Like, what was some of your very early job roles? And I love hearing about people who worked in fast food as some of their first perhaps job roles when they were, you know, working at school or at uni or TAFE or something. Who did you work with, Jason? Do you want to name it?
It was Hungry Jack's, actually.
Okay. So a lot of the, you know, lean processing, lots of different Kaizen, continuous improvement and following systems and structures, a lot of that gets drilled into us. But let's advance and have a look. Here's someone just sitting in perhaps a rainy afternoon in Melbourne having a look at the newspaper. And this could have been me in the early part of my career. I was obsessed with looking at the newspaper in the job ads. I used to love looking not just at who was recruiting, but what they were recruiting for. I became quite obsessed with the specific skills that they were looking for. Now, maybe that was me trying to fit in, you know, trying to work out, do I have the skill for this job? Could I apply for it? But I think what happened over years and years and years of looking and applying and just being obsessed with this job ad and the job market is that I got to become very familiar with different tasks and job roles. Not from an HR perspective, not interested in that, not interested in recruiting, but looking at what have I got and how might I be able to meld or twist that in a positive way for the job role, for the job ad. So these days I do have to stop myself from looking at Seek or one of the other job apps. It can be quite addictive. You know, you might be going, I can't contract anymore, I'm going to go look for a job, you know, what's out there. And I think there's a good reason to do that, is to just know what's happening in the job market. What are people looking for? Who's recruiting? Who's not? Who's, you know, expanding in a particular area? Who looks like they've got a new department or new division and they're adding new people to it? So I think it can be one of the skills we can employ on ourselves, is to just keep across what's happening in the marketplace. But this topic around the skills for our capability or the skills for our future, this started very early on in the COVID pandemic. And this was me running a workshop. I did one for the Lean Agile Systems Thinking team, and then I did one with Julia Steele for her book called Unite. And I put together a range of skills that I thought we needed for those times. And ultimately, I called them adaptability is the capability. Like, we need to be able to adapt. And I'm seeing lots of people who are going, heck, you know, I've been made redundant or I've been rolled off a contract. What do I do now? And we can go back and look for exactly the same role. Whereas I think we can build our skill, build our offer of the things that we can do, again, looking at what have I done previously? What have I got knowledge and experience in? What am I obsessed with? Or what do I really have a great interest in? But after I'd been running this session quite a few times, then companies were saying, tell us how to cope with these weird pandemic times. That topic has evolved more and more and more. And I started writing some different articles for publications like Forbes on saying that, look, some of these old ways of thinking and working are giving way to fresh leadership insights and capabilities. And I found that stuff exciting. So again, I was exploring this topic of skills. And then I had such a genius day where I got myself on the TV on Channel 7, look, with Kylie and Larry on the morning show. And I had to go down to the studio here in Melbourne in Docklands, which I do occasionally. I am on the telly sometimes. But what I wanted to do here was capture these three screens and look at their ticker tape they run across the bottom. So one was about skills shortage and the reasons behind there was a high demand for different jobs. There were certain job categories they were keen to show. And then one of the other tickers said, we were talking then about transferable skills. So if you've had skills and experience in one field, how might you be able to use those generalised skills and work in other areas? So they asked me a few questions about that. So that was fun. That was fun and interesting. But then we talked about this idea of ebbing and flowing, that sometimes there are skills shortages and then other times there's sort of that skills glut. And it really reflects how people are shifting from, one area or one field into another. And in a way, you don't have to wait long before the skills market changes again. So even if what you've got isn't, one of the highest recruited areas at the moment, it's just wait a little while and things will start to shift again, as we're certainly seeing now. So I've put all of this thinking together, and so I'm really in the last stages of wrapping up and writing another book, which is about clever skills. So I think there's a bunch of things we can be doing, particular skills we can do and have and develop. And so I want to run through some of the thinking behind this today. So that book should be out in a couple of months' time. But here we go. Thank you. Well, congratulate me when it's actually out. There's always a few hiccups. Oh, isn't this the question people are saying, will AI take my job? And I'm like, people, it's the wrong use of your cognitive, skills. Stop wondering and stressing and fretting, will AI take my job? And use that time and effort and energy to build more skill. It's like, stop engaging in this debate. It absolutely drives me spare to think that we keep debating this will or won't. Which skills will vanish, which ones won't. And the media loves to engage in this sort of debate. But I think keep away from it and focus instead on building your capabilities so that no matter what happens, you'll be adaptable, right? You'll be flexible. So we know that industries evolve. We know they demand new and different skills. And, there's a reason why there's a skills gap at the moment. And what we find for individuals is when we don't evolve our skills, three big things happen. We stagnate, and I reckon that happens, professionally, mentally, emotionally. We end up under-earning, so we don't earn as much as we possibly can, or we have the potential to. Not suggesting you have to go for earning, but many people are in a position of under-earning. Even though they've got, remember, this wonderful history, they've got great skills from volunteer roles and early jobs from school days, depending what stage of your career you're at. And also this idea of underemployment. So you might not be working as many hours as you could be available to, or the whole community itself is probably not got as many people working as much as they would like to. Just last night at the supermarket, I was talking to one of the team members, and they said they were working 3 different jobs in different places to, save up money so they could bring their family from South America. Talk about not stagnating, not under earning, certainly not underemployed, but possibly on the road to being burnt out through, being driven. But I think it's something for us to think about. How are we evolving our own skills? And so I'm not necessarily meaning your technical skills today, not really talking about that. And it's not also just about work, right? These are skills for life. These are the sorts of skills that we use for coping and surviving. So many of us have had to adapt to a whole range of things over recent times. And I don't think I realise how powerful skills are that we need in life generally last year my father was ill and he died. He was in palliative care for several weeks. Years ago in a previous life, I worked in radio. And one of the clients I had was a palliative care agency. And they used to have me present a radio show every fortnight on palliative care. So end of life care. And so then when my dad enters palliative care, I'm like, yeah, I know all about this. I've interviewed like 30 people on a radio show about it. I knew about all these topics. And so I was able to then have meaningful and not too overly emotionally charged. It was pretty tough. It was a very difficult time. But I found that I was bringing these different skills to having the conversation with a little bit of knowledge about it. And absolutely those skills helped me through that time and helped me care for my mum at that time and take her to the hospital and heck, write a eulogy, deliver it, coach myself through the grief, and continue to run my business. Again, not an easy thing to go through, but I was very conscious of all these different skills that I was not only sort of sharpening and developing, but that I was also realizing that I had. And I think a lot of these skills kind of get pushed away because we don't use them. So these are great skills. Clever skills is what I call them. So you might wonder what's clever. It is stuff that's ingenious. Love the word ingenuity. It means clever, using the resources you have, right? These are skills that are quite smart. I reckon they're quite sharp. They're resourceful. They can be quite leveraged. That is, you can use it for one thing and then it helps you work with something else. And to me, they're like the pocket knife. It's a multi-use tool. It can do a number of things. One clever skill can have a whole range of uses. So I thought I'd run through 9 things that are really showing the kind of conditions for why we need better cognitive skills and clever cognitive skills. So you might want to draw along with me. There's this 3x3 grid, and we'll have a look at along the bottom what's happening in regards to the future, how the future's unfolding. In the middle, skills, and then let's look at ourselves and just some brief words into each of these. So if we look at the future, one of the reasons why we need to really up our skills and do better, not just look at technical stuff, not just look at management and leadership, these kind of cliched things, but go, how am I evolving my own thinking? And these, I would call them, these are tricky times. How many times did people use the word unprecedented or pivot? These were things over the last, say, 3 to 6 years that many people haven't experienced before in their life. And so we have these tricky times. And then you put also people in a situation of cost of living pressures, and you've got, this is a tricky time too. Then someone has a job loss. Here's another tricky time. Or a health or wellness issue, or a geographic isolation issue, or some other sorts of things, some family crisis. So we have these sort of multiplying tricky times in our lives. And I also imagine it's a bit like the beautiful origami crane. Let's say, someone's presented one to you. The future is sort of hidden in there, in that we only get to see a little bit at a time. If you were to slowly pull apart each of the folds on the origami crane, that's what's happening with the future. I love looking at the work of Amy Webb, stuff from the Institute for the Future. These sorts of thinkers are really having a look. We're using foresight to have a look at what's going to happen into the future and their predictions and scenarios. Not so much crystal ball, but what are some of the things that we can see happening? What can we see the steps are evolving? And then I would also throw in there, life's little surprises, the unexpected, whatever that is. You've had unexpected things happen in life. It catches you. People say, I was blindsided. And part of me wants to go, why? Why were you blindsided? Like, had you thought of some potential things that could happen? Not that we want to dwell on them or get anxious about them, but I think there's a skill we can develop that can help us with life surprises. More on that in a moment. We also know what's happening with skills. Companies everywhere have been talking about it, and the media has too. There is a skills gap between what they want and what we've got. And they're struggling to recruit and find the talent to accelerate and get to the point that that company needs to get to. So I reckon anything we can do to extend our own capabilities is a good thing, makes us more employable again. But despite that, and I've put this in the centre, the market is the market is the market. So whatever's going on in the marketplace, you know, we can't necessarily change the outside. I've been listening to the lovely Michael Singer and his beautiful sort of meditations about consciousness and stop trying to change the outside. You know, he says we're all a bit messed up in here and what we try and do is change the outside world. But in fact, we need to do something that helps us cope with things better. So we can't influence the market. We've got to work on the things that we can influence, and that is certainly our skills and our development. I reckon there's a new hybrid. It's not working in the office and working online. It's working with AI. That is the new hybrid, isn't it? Okay, it wasn't really my idea. I saw someone wrote an article and said the new hybrid, but I reckon that's what it is. It's an absolute blender of the capabilities that hybrid work and our hybrid mix of skills, right? Bringing all those skills forward, chuck it in the blender, use a bit of AI for this, that, and the other. Boom. Who's accelerating where now? Mm-hmm. And looking also at ourselves, we're now having to work in an organisation, in a community, in a team that is very much, I'm calling it multi-diversity, right? So it's not just neurodiversity or gender diversity. Just know we've got so many different generations now in the workforce. And your generation, the age you are, is not static. So you too are going to evolve through some different generations. How are you going to cope with that? Like, how are you going to cope with yourself as you get older and as the market shifts again for what skills you need to continue working for as long as you want to work? And how are you going to respond to working with different generations? Already we see this, you know, the war, the verbal war again in the media, pitting us against each other. I'm just not playing that war. I'm going to build the skills I can to make sure I can collaborate with different types of people, different ages, different genders, different cultures, and neurodiversities. We've really got to do better there. And if we extend the AI topic, I love this idea of you're going to let your own thinking atrophy. That is, you're going to let it just go blur and let AI do everything for you. And I say, do not outsource your own clever, right? Don't outsource your own clever, not all of it, to AI. And anything that you don't use, what's that saying? Is it the arthritis team? They talk about move it or lose it. The physio down at Peninsula Health here, Helen Gordon, I used to work with her years and years ago. She was always tramping around, you know, shouting to all of the patients at the hospital, you know, move it or lose it, move it or lose it. And I think the same thing applies here. We've already got skills. If we don't keep using them, they are going to atrophy. They are going to waste. They are going to get fat and blobby around the middle. And when we do need to use them, we'll be dreadfully out of practice. And we'll probably make a few boo-boos, a few mistakes, and not good ones. And so to me, when we look at the future and the topic of skills and then ourselves in that, I think more and more there's an opportunity for us to really kind of choose our own adventure. Motion is lotion, thanks for that. That we can choose our own adventure. And is training dead? You know, is learning and development, has it passed its use by date? love to have a conversation about this, because what I'm seeing is a lot of organisations don't have the time, the budget. That's where they're making lots of cuts in developing their people. And a lot of development now can be do it yourself. You can develop your own learning plan and then go out there and source the providers, the topics, the resources to make your own learning. There's so many free and online programs available. You really can choose your own adventure about how you want to be skilled or be skilled up or re-skilled, and side skilling. Some of the research is talking about too, not just getting better at something, but going, what's an adjacent skill that I would need to learn here? So you might be wondering, that all sounds good, Lynne, but which skills are you talking about? Well, of course, if they're clever skills, it's the clever cognitive skills that we have. And so here's 3 things I want you to do. I want you to use your existing clever cognitive skills. Don't let them go to waste. Don't outsource them to AI. Don't defer to AI if you already have some of this clever. And by use, I mean like consciously notice some skills that you're using. Right now, I'm using thinking skills, presentation skills. I'm deliberately using some engagement skills, some persuasion and influence skills. I'm using communication skills. And think about, do these things come easily to you? Or there might be some that you go, I have to use this skill and I find it a bit tricky, or I find I'm a bit clunky with that skill. So it might be that you need to, deliberately switch that skill on. You could be in a meeting with a colleague or client and say, I better show some more empathy. Click, out comes some empathy, right? I better demonstrate that I'm listening. Click, yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying. So this is where that default can come in, that we just don't bring skills like empathy or creativity or collaboration deliberately. We just go with, that's just how I am. Thanks for that meaningful Jason.
Well
Perfect
timed, yeah.
timing. Perfect timing. Sound effects. So the second thing I encourage you to do then is go a bit further. So now develop more of your clever skills. So absolutely take opportunities to observe others and to learn from them. That means asking, how did you do that? What would you suggest I read? Do you listen to any particular podcasts on that topic? So take any of those opportunities you can. They're always good for building our knowledge and capability. But of course, trying or experimenting and practicing. Just earlier today, I was recording a video for visual skills, because I teach workshops in how to think visually so you can be a better collaborator and communicator. And a lot of people don't want to use those skills until they're really good at them. They say, I'll practice in private. And I'm like, no, practice in public, right? Practice in public, because the fact that you're using that skill, you are steps ahead anyway of anybody else around you who isn't using the skill. So even though you think the quality of your stuff might suck a little bit, it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
And I know in the Agile and Scrum community, we talk about Shu Ha Ri, don't we? We talk about Shu, that concept of the basic foundational skills, and Ha, that next level of skill, and then Ri is when you're allowed to, this so well, bring your own thing. So that also brings in this topic of, as you develop, notice higher levels of competency around you. So if someone is asking great questions, or somebody is diffusing conflict, or somebody else has done something rapidly, effortlessly, they're someone that I would go tap on the shoulder and ask them, could you give me 25 words or less what you just did? How did you do that?
I was just going to ask you whether you had any tricks on noticing, like how do you sort of step into that, giving yourself enough, I guess, capacity to be able to step into noticing and spend some effort on noticing?
Yeah, well, it's difficult to notice if you're listening to something and you're also on your device. And I talked about that recently in Adelaide at a conference. That takes so much of our ability to notice. So it's like turn off distractions if you want to notice.
Mm.
And that beautiful research around that says if you want to be fully cognitively present, then put your device out of sight. So not just there, but out of sight. And then your brain's much more cognitively present for something like that.
Good one.
And of course, use every sense you've got, eyes, ears, watch body language, tune in, see if you can mimic things. I remember seeing there's a great classic film, what was it, Working Girl from back in the 80s. And Melanie Griffith she's on an exercise bike and she's listening to an audio tape, like a dictation device where someone had recorded some, emails or memos. And she was trying to mimic the sound of the voice, the tone of the voice, and that was helping change her speech abilities. I've had a background in radio broadcasting, and so I know I can notice quite quickly when people have upward inflections in their voice, when they have particular tonal patterns. So speaking could be something, record yourself at your next meeting, let people know you're recording yourself, and then listen back later. Cringe, and then listen to how did you go, right? What could you improve? Was your question very waffly before you got to the point? Or did you even let people finish their answer before you jumped in? And so then the third area here, I reckon you can now leverage. If you're using some skills, you're looking at developing them, then get on the lever, get on the seesaw and leverage your skills. I love the use of layered skills. So I do that a lot in facilitation. I'll be building rapport and communicating clearly, and then I'll be listening and then validating people. So there's this lovely layering of skills and going, right, I'm going to have to show empathy. Now I'm going to have to listen. Now I'm going to have to show some sensitivity and kindness. Now I'll be quite directive. Oh, now I'll bring my visual skills. So it's this lovely big layer. And I think our skills can be well leveraged when we're in a group. So there's lots of stuff happening, but it applies a little bit more pressure to us. And, brain loves a little bit of pressure to try and get that extra bit of performance. And then I think we can combine skills together. So I love facilitating and using visualization. It's a bit like that pat the head, rub the tummy thing. It's like, how do I ask questions? So elicit information, listen to what's being said, and then validate what someone has said with some empathy. Like that's juggling 4 skills at once. But boom, to me, that's what makes us, great humans, incredibly powerful skills, not just listening, but listening and like, what can you do to really multiply that? So there are a few tips about using, developing and leveraging, but I just wanted to go a little bit further and be a bit more specific now about some clever cognitive skills, and just a few of my favorites. So facilitation, definitely, which we know facilitation is that skill that helps make things easier for people. So to me, that is a skill of the mind to work out, how do I make this easier for people? So there's the picture of me facilitating, and you can see I've got the beautiful, which is known as the open palm gesture, which from monkey and ape times communicates, I have no weapons, right? I'm not going to injure you. So it's such a beautiful gesture. That would be a skill, right? Instead of facilitating like this or this, to go, okay, I'm going to try and facilitate with a little bit more open palm, which is much more conciliatory and much more amiable. What am I doing over there? Oh, yes, Yes, I'm describing something there. So that's sort of those workshops. Oh, I'm having flashbacks. I was really trying to juggle influencing the group and listening to them. Oh, it's how do I kind of bring them along and make them go where I want them to go? It's a skill. It's a skill and capability, and I reckon again, it's some of that layering. Oh, improvisation. I think this is such a skill of the moment, of this time in life, in the world. And I don't mean Whose Line Is It Anyway, or those improv shows on stages where they're trying to get the audience to laugh, or they're telling a story and haha, won't that be funny? I'm talking about thinking in the moment. What am I going to do next? So it's our ability to adapt. And to me, when something happens in a conversation or a workshop, I can take the road that first comes into my mind, or I can just wait a moment, a microsecond, and my brain will provide a couple of other options for me. So that's some of that noticing I was talking about. If we're not tuned into that, then your brain will be giving you stuff, but you won't notice it. You'll be too busy. You'll be too distracted. I love the work of Keith Johnston, guru in improv, and he has lots to say about improvisation, particularly around things like status. So if you're dealing with some of the big wigs and head honchos in your organisation, how you can understand a bit more about the status games that go on, and how you can respond in better and different ways. Here's a picture of me. I was at the Agile USA conference. This was 2019, it must have been. And that's an audience of 2.5, nearly 3,000 people. Wow. And so I'm delivering my prepared talk, but the improviser in me is going, just ask the audience a couple of questions. And so I did. And a few people were shouting things out, and I had a fabulous time. It was great fun. And later on, people said, I loved it how you asked the audience some questions. But of course, in me, I'm going, heck, I don't know what they're going to say. That's improv, right? I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm going to trust myself that I have this wealth of experience, and I'll be able to cobble some things together, and we'll be okay. We'll be okay. And one of the third skills I'll share tonight, which is another great love of mine, is sense making, or making sense. And this is some of the information coined by Dr. Carl Week, who many people see as sort of one of the godfathers of sense making. Deborah Ancona is also a genius in this area at MIT. I know many people would know of Dave Snowden's Cynefin framework and his SenseMaker app. So there are many different sort of schools of thought around how we can make sense. But my view is, if you can build this skill, you're able to make sense when it's a shit show, when there's lots of stuff going on and people don't know what's happening. If we're able to then sort of step into this situation and go, hang on a minute, let's see how this information connects. And this was a manufacturing business I was working with, and we'd written some stuff down using that visualization technique, and then we ripped all the pages up and moved them all around on the table. So we were doing that group sense making, group communication, group collaboration. We weren't sitting around looking at a spreadsheet. We weren't just sitting talking, looking at nothing. We were really getting into it and moving things around. And we were able to very rapidly make sense of some complex stuff. And we're able to then sort of come out the other side of that, what's going on, and go, now we can see what's happening. Now we can make sense of what's going on.
Looks intriguing.
It was a great piece of work, a great project. So there's just 3 skills. I think there's probably 50 to 70 cognitive skills we could be using better. And I'll put 25 or so in this new book. But yeah, if I use facilitation for ease, improvisation for being adaptable, and then I bring sense making for a bit of clarity, you go, wow, that could be a really interesting piece of work. That could be a great meeting or workshop. That could be a good project. That might just help you get through a pretty difficult conversation. So the thing for me, when we look at the skills that us humans have, we can pick and choose which ones we deliberately not only develop or use, but also the ones that we use together. And I like that idea that pick yourself, go and pick fruit yourself, pick the strawberries you want, and the blueberries you want, or the apples that you want. You get that lovely choice. And the same thing happens to us. We've got a background of skills. We've probably got a bit of a career plan. We've got a life that we're in. How are we going to navigate that? Because we cannot control the external situation. We can only control how we're able to respond to it. And if we can build better skills, better thinking skills, better cognitive skills, and don't outsource that to AI, not all of it anyway, have augment AI, interact with it, prompt it further, speed it up, tell it what you do and don't want, have another go, keep going with it to get, the things that you need for the work that you're doing or for the life that you're living. So a recap there, use skills that you already have and look at how you can already develop those a bit further. And then I think there's a big magnifying, effect that can happen when you really leverage the skill that you have, particularly if we're talking about some of your strengths, perhaps. If people have said, oh, that's one of your strengths, what do? Do you go, oh, well, it's a strength, so I'll focus on some other stuff? Or do you go, oh, wow, this is a strength, I'm going to I'm going to multiply this further and really make this a feature of who I am and how I do work, how I go through life. I think I've done that with facilitation. I love making things easier for people. I love sense making for people. And so, when there's difficult stuff happening in life, I'll often go into facilitation mode. How do I make this easier? So that brings us to the end of clever skills, but you have great human capabilities, and I want you to put them more to work. Don't outsource them. Don't give them up. Don't let them atrophy and become unfit, but rather keep using them. Notice which ones could do with a little bit more development. And if the future industrial revolution or the current one is cognitive, hang on to it, keep developing it, use it or lose it. Jason.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lynne. I've just got I was just experimenting with a bit of a poll in the background, so I think I'll launch that now so that people can sort of interact with that and perhaps maybe walk away with a bit of a, now that I've been thinking about what Lynne has been talking about, what do I see as my greatest capability or my greatest skill? And that's something that we can share. I saw in the chat as well, Pia picked up a moment, and I think it was a moment where I had a double take as well. Emotion is lotion. I was like, wow, I haven't heard that before. That is so cool. And I don't know if anybody else was like writing along while you were talking or not, but I was doing a bit of a mind map of your 9 squares. And I was really taken by the aspect and wanted to sort of, my biggest takeaway from today, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is this concept of complementary skills, which sits in that leverage space. And I think today's market, if you like, which is kind of where I put this complementary skills piece as well. If AI is here, and some people do think of AI as, is it going to take my job, like you said? I think of it as a partner, something that we can partner with to actually, make things more efficient or faster, but not necessarily take over what we're currently capable of doing. And it can, when we look at the information that AI is taking from, unless you're heavily customizing it, it's taking a lot of crap off the internet.
It is.
And so sense making, right?
It. That's right. Yeah.
So I agree. I think it is a new hybrid, and I think blending AI or partnering with it. I mean, we had a talk with Jeff Sutherland last week. That one of the quotes from his talk, if I read verbatim here, is the integration of AI into agile teams is no longer a futuristic vision. It's actually happening right now.
Yeah.
So let's not be shy of the fact that it's here, but let's work out how we can leverage it. You know, we are seeing a change in market. We are seeing that people that have got skills in AI are not are not looking for work. You know, there's plenty of work
Yes,
there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if that's the complementary skill that you can build up, then let's make it happen. Thank you again. Has anyone got any questions for Lynne before we wrap up? I want to open it up to the floor. We do have something in chat just now.
Yes.
Might be an observation, or is it a question? It's from my physio, encouraging me to keep moving and the power of the body, motion isolation. I
It's
remember
like Helen Gordon said to me, yes, move it or lose it. Yeah.
move or lose it. There you go.
Yeah.
I know that you have used zombie references in your literature before, Lynne, and
Yes.
I remember a quote from World War Z, which was "Life is motion."
Oh, where? Yes. Nice.
Yeah. So, any other questions from the group before we wrap up?
Oh, I like also comments, complaints, compliments,
feedback,
anecdotes, insights, anything, any contribution at all. Natalie?
Great topic, and thank you for sharing your information with us as well. It's hugely appreciated, and we love to hear you speak. As an Adelaidean, that's already last, so good to see you back as well. Just wanted to comment on one, yes, looking at those transferable skills. One of the things that I find most interesting is actually looking at people's skills outside of their professional lives. So what they do in their hobbies, you actually never really know what people do on the weekends, what their side gigs are. And so I'm always like, oh my God, you know how to do that.
That's right. That's right.
Understanding like their full skill set, but I find it really useful to actually overlay it with like their values and what they're passionate about, because then you're going to get so much more out of them. And if you're like, you know, just minor tweaks when you look at packets of work and who you can kind of peg for this and peg for that, because if people are working in like their skill set and what they actually enjoy doing and where they're aligning with their values, you're going to get so much more out of them.
So true. So true. It's really tapping that leverage. You know, it's using someone's skill, allowing them to develop it at work, which is then going to leverage their skill and their performance, and then ultimately the whole team's performance, probably. Great idea. Great idea.
And so much more enjoyable for them too, right?
Yes, that's right. They'll be buzzing.
How much time do we spend at work? We spend so much time there, so we should enjoy it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
I've got one question from Kalo here. So asking team members is what drives them forward. So a statement really. Sorry. One question I am asking the team is team members is what drives them forward. So what's the motivation, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, great to understand that. There used to be a diagnostic I loved. I don't know if it's still around, but it was called instinctive drives. And so I didn't worry about people's personality or what their preferences were, and none of that stuff. All it did was identify 4 instinctive drives and whether you were high and low on them. And, you know, it was the drive to complete and the drive to authenticate and the drive to improvise and the drive to analyze, I think, was the 4th. And so mine was drive to improvise, really high. And then other people in the team, you could say, oh, yes, they are very driven to authenticate information, so to get things signed off and get them approved and get it done properly and fully, rather than, you know, giving them a hard time about, oh, you're always taking so long. We worked out, they're driven to achieve and move forward by working in that way. And it was such an insight, great insight. They were called instinctive drives. Yeah.
Instinctive drives, something to look up.
That's okay. Look after that throat. You know, the voice, the human voice, one of our greatest capabilities. You got to look after that one.
Good on you, Kayla. Okay, guys.
Cool.
Thank you so much again, Lynn. It's been a
My
pleasure
pleasure.
to be here. And oh, sorry, we've got Pia has got
Pia, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Pia. When I registered for this meetup, I submitted a question and it's as follows. Thank you for reminding me. Over the years, I've been inspired by hearing Lynn speak, your books and concepts. Where are you sourcing your inspiration?
Oh, where am I sourcing my inspiration? A little bit of everywhere. Like I'm always, I wouldn't say I'm always on, but what I've noticed over recent years is if I'm quiet, I can hear my kind of inner, my inner voice. I don't know what it is, or if it's our intuition or our inner sort of knowing that says, do this, follow that, read this. And that will often guide me when I'm scanning through media and articles. Something will just go, stop, read that. And then I start reading it. No, it says keep going. Like, oh, look at that. Look at that tree. That's interesting. Wonder what that's about. Oh, go and explore. Take a photo of that. So I get lots of inspiration from places like theatre, books, obviously magazines. Don't listen to many podcasts. Love going outdoors. Love finding other industries and sectors and go, what are they doing? I'm a total aviation geek. So I love looking and learning about aviation, air traffic control, and going, how does some of that stuff, the way things work there, apply to what we're doing here?
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Pia.
Awesome sauce. Thank you very much.
Inquisitive. Yeah, curiosity, I think. That's the clever skill I'm writing about, is curiosity. How do you wonder and explore, but then know when to stop so it doesn't become a rumination or obsessive. Yeah. Which I'm quite capable of doing. Don't worry about that. Yes.
I think we all can be, yes. I love the concept of curiosity. I think it does wrap it. It is a nice wrapper for that, and it gives you that opportunity, if you remain curious, to take that pause. When I was asking about tricks for noticing before, take a couple of extra seconds before you jump in and answer a question. Try and understand where somebody's coming from in the context of what they might be asking or saying or whatever. So yeah, curiosity is a lovely thing.
I think it's really having a bit of a moment, curiosity. There's been a few more books, there's been a few more articles, many more people, you'll hear a keynote speaker say, we've got to be more curious. And you sit there going, right, how do I do that? Like, help me. So we can have these sort of prescriptive things, but then we've got to have some more steps as to how do I become more curious? What could I do? Yeah. Thank you.
How do I unlock that superpower?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everybody. Thanks again, Lynn. Really appreciate the insights and value that you've offered the group, and we'll be in touch. I think I'm really keen to have a look at your book writing course, so I might go on to that later on.
Good on that. Thanks, Jason, and thanks everybody for coming along, and to those who are watching the recording.